As part of a stepped-up effort by motor racing's governing body to monitor compliance with the cost cap restrictions, it has now stepped in over the usage of special project divisions outside of F1 teams, which some feared were being utilised to help identify performance advantages. In recent years, it has been usual for F1 teams to hire top technical professionals to work in separate divisions on technological initiatives, to capitalise on expertise garnered through Grand Prix racing and sell it to the broader corporate sector. And the FIA have now done everything they can to stop this loophole. The newly imposed TD45 takes effect immediately and is retroactive to January 1st of this year. The FIA describes it as a technical regulation as well as a cost cap admin clarification that tackles the problem of non-F1 activity expenditures. Many of the leading teams, including Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull, Aston Martin and McLaren, have non-F1 engineering units. All of these have been successful and they have worked on a variety of projects involving road cars, America's Cup sailboats, bicycles, and other innovations. However, the FIA has stepped in after concerns that some were perhaps playing the system by utilising these divisions to advance F1 expertise on the side outside of the cost cap, then providing that information back to their teams for free. The new TD specifies how the FIA would interpret the expenses of any technology or intellectual property generated by these non-F1 entities and later utilised by the F1 team, and makes it clear that the value of any such occurrences will be included in the cost cap. This is an attempt to plug a potential gap in the cost cap laws. In principle, such technology might have been given to the F1 team for free or at a low fee that substantially underestimated the true cost of development. How might it be demonstrated? What thought process launched a technology that benefited the F1 team? What about engineering personnel transferring from the Formula One team to the sibling firm developing the new technology? Could they be exempt from the cost cap? What if they later return to the main F1 team? The recent hiring of Red Bull senior engineer Rob Marshall by McLaren is thought to have repercussions in this regard. Although Marshall was no longer part of the current F1 team's program, his chief engineering officer role was described as having a broader remit across the Red Bull group, including powertrains. Red Bull boss Christian Horner stated that if he returned, it would be difficult to justify his salary under the cost cap when there were more junior, cheaper engineers capable of doing the job. The present cost cap regulations, the relevant provision of which is related party transactions, do not address this type of issue. The new technical guideline is an attempt to make this less unclear and more enforceable. There is a significant difference between using F1 technology and selling it to the outside world, which is completely legal and permitted by the regulations, and doing the process the other way around, creating a technology that is then used by the F1 team. The FIA's recent step is a first attempt at regulating through the clarification of a technical directive, a problem that is likely to be incorporated in the real regulations in the future. It's also usual practice to rotate design and technical personnel between F1 initiatives like car updates and non-F1 tasks. In this approach, their services may be invoiced to either organization based on the job completed. The FIA can interview these employees to see whether their job had any overlap that was not covered by how it was categorized. While teams are free to maintain these special projects divisions, any IP from them that is utilized by F1 teams must be accounted for under the cost cap and cannot originate from free sources inside the same firm, according to TD45. F1 expertise may still be freely distributed to technical departments and used for outside business purposes. However, one senior F1 source with first-hand knowledge of the matter stated that TD45 had already been implemented and made its rounds. It's had an impact, the source added. Some have been forced to act because they realized what they were doing is no longer allowed. But the difficult part is they will have been doing it since January 1st, when the TD declared a cut-off point, so they will have had a spend up until this point that they now need to address and somehow claw back. Since the start of the cost cap, there has been widespread concern about teams leveraging the usage of F1 personnel assigned to outside activities. Alpine team principal Ottmar Schaffnauer stated earlier this year that larger teams had found methods to avoid hiring employees to avoid counting against the cost restriction. I think what some of the other teams are now doing, the bigger teams, is they're looking to exploit or have a better understanding of where there's some loopholes or some organizational changes you can make to actually stuff more people under that budget cap, he said. And we are not there yet. They're looking at I got rid of 100 people, but now I want to hire them back. They can find spots for them where they either don't count as a whole person, or they do some marketing stuff or whatever it is, or they work on a boat for some of the time. The advent of TD45 coincides with what multiple sources say is a significantly more comprehensive effort by the FIA this year to analyse team spending as part of its cost cap investigation. For overspending this budget cap throughout 2021, Red Bull was fined $7 million and granted a decrease in wind tunnel development time last year. The $4 million excess spend was mostly the result of a series of administrative blunders, with some disagreements about which sums would be considered inside the budget cap, such as catering charges, specified components, and HMRC refunds. A substantial financial penalty, along with further constraints on their aerodynamic growth, is a vote of confidence in a system. If you exceed the agreed-upon amount, you will be fined. However, it revealed the infancy of the rules, which were long overdue at the top of motorsport. Many components of the regulations still need to be modified to avoid teams from incurring undesired penalties now that F1, the teams, and the FIA have figured out how to police the procedure. And the new TD is another example of the FIA trying to slow down cheating. However, there is an extra hidden capital expenditure expense the teams must be mindful of to avoid overspending in another budget. And this budget is not for everyone. This one is particular for the smaller teams to play catch-up. There is a CapEx, the capital expenditure version of the cost cap, explains Williams team principal James Vowles. It's a bit complicated, but it's $36 million spread across 4 years. Every year you can spend 6 or 7 of that if you just do it fairly equally. Increasing CapEx is an important aspect of Williams' strategy to catch up to their rivals as they strive to strengthen their facilities to compete with championship-winning teams. CapEx is a critical component of how teams invest in their infrastructure. It is quite improbable that they will be able to develop a car with the same performance as elite outfits as Mercedes, Red Bull, and Ferrari if they do not have the same level of infrastructure. If I take an example of things that were in Williams when a designer releases a part, it sort of goes into a black hole. There's emails going backwards and forwards between production to try and find out where their part is, how it's being upgraded, how big it is, how long it will take, explains Vowles. Normally, that would go into a digital system that can be tracked to understand what the car gets made up of. Bear in mind, there are 17,000 components, so by the time you have designers doing this 17,000 times, you get lost and you have inefficiencies. The software to fix that isn't £100, but that's millions and even up to tens of millions if you get it right. The majority of Williams' current investment has gone towards the first building pieces, which include equipment, simulators, and software. Vowles feels that increasing CapEx will allow organizations towards the rear of the grid to invest more on infrastructure, increasing their prospects of progress. What we're looking for is the ability to show where we are today, where the benchmark is, and the ability to spend to catch up to that benchmark, he stated. Outdated processes are frequently the cause of where teams struggle to keep performance on track. McLaren's form has slowed in recent years because of a complicated wind tunnel arrangement that sees them employ an old Toyota facility off-site in Cologne. This made it difficult for the team to keep up with the aggressive and rapid innovations necessary in F1. The team has spent the previous several years substantially investing in a new wind tunnel and simulator, which it intends to open this year in time to create their 2025 car. Team principal Andrea Stella says he would want to see the CapEx limitations loosened, but concedes it will be a complex topic to tackle. We understand where James is coming from, because McLaren is a team that has operated without infrastructure or infrastructure at the same level as some top teams for a long time, said Stella. This is the reason why we have invested, largely to be able to have a new wind tunnel and our simulator, a composite facility. Even if these infrastructures haven't seen the light yet, but we are in the final sprint. We are operating at the limit in terms of cost cap from a CapEx point of view, and actually we welcome a conversation about relaxing some of these limits because we would like to further invest. It's a complex topic. There is also another third cap teams have to abide to. This one is more related to R&D as opposed to money spent. And this rule has enabled Aston Martin to rise from the ashes, as Aston Martin has been one of the year's outstanding teams, emerging as a true frontrunner following a poor 2022. It is no surprise that Aston Martin was one of the main advocates for the aerodynamic testing restrictions, ATR, headed by current Alpine team principal Ottmar Schaffnauer. The ATR limits offer teams lower in the Constructors' Championship more aero testing hours based on their previous season's finish. This is updated mid-season to reflect the current finishing order. Schaffnauer believes a similar methodology might be used for CapEx to allow back-office teams to level the playing field in terms of infrastructure. I think it's only fair that we level the playing field on infrastructure and the tools that you fundamentally need to go Formula One racing, added Schaffnauer. We've done it once already for wind tunnels. For example, Aston didn't have a state-of-the-art tunnel, and we gave them dispensation, gave everyone dispensation on wind tunnels. Even if the cost cap was implemented to make F1 more competitive on the track, there is still work to be done behind the scenes before teams can genuinely compete on a level playing field. But in Aston Martin's case, it has helped, but for some other teams, it hasn't done anything. So it isn't just about the money. It's also about having the right people within the organization to fully develop the car. What are your thoughts on the cost cap and the other capped costs and test hours? Are these good innovations? Or does it help the teams with the smartest workers more? After all, there are only so many employees on the grid that can implement huge changes that make the difference. Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.